morning's first. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer, Chris Carter. And they call him Nick Wright.
Pay up. Pay up.
Oh, my God.
Pay up.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Jenna, I have...
Get that right back.
Why? What's wrong?
No, CC owes me some money. Thank you. $100.
$100 for what?
You didn't have a pen. He bet you would. I bet you wouldn't. CC's faith in you has cost him $100.
You bet $100 that I wouldn't remember my pen?
Well, Jenna.
100?
I mean, how many times since we reconnected, haven't I been trying to tell you about the show? No one has more faith in you than me.
He bet on you, and so now the $100 I lost betting against you.
There's an easy way to solve this. I could just get a computer out here, and I wouldn't need this pen.
Then you'd leave the computer, you have to be, hey, guys, computer. Anyway, Thursday after the show, anyone got a computer?
That'd cost me more money.
Thank you, appreciate
just
that.
FYI, I really actually forgot the pen this morning.
Yeah,
there was
you do every morning.
Because I carry so much stuff around.
I won
$100.
Yeah.
This will not happen again, America.
Okay.
I will. This is going to get. I'm right here. Here we go.
We have a staff,
here we go, Matt Patricia.
We have a staff of 12.
Matt
11 of them
Patricia.
work for Jenna. I guess we got to have the whole staff.
Okay.
We need a pen man.
Pin guy.
Let's
morning,
start
everybody.
the show now that you're $100 richer.
Yes, let's do it.
Well, what an NFL offseason it's been so far. Storyline after storyline after yet another storyline. Jerry Jones making news this morning with his assessment on how far apart his team is from the Eagles, his division rivals, and the defending Super Bowl champs. Cowboys finished 9-7 and missed the playoffs last season. Eagles finished 13-3 and missed nothing last season. Yet Jerry Jones says there isn't that big of a gap between the two teams. What do you think, Cece? How big of a gap is there between the Eagles and the Cowboys coming off what you saw last season and where they're heading this season?
I don't know what Jerry's looking at, but if we could trade rosters, there's no way that the owner, a friend of yours there in Philadelphia, would trade his roster for Jerry's roster there in Dallas. What has Dallas done since the Eagles were crowned Super Bowl champs to bring them closer, since the gap's not far away, Jerry? I mean, what have they done to get closer? I mean, Philadelphia, to me, is the team that, based on what they've done this offseason, they're the team that hadn't won. They're trying to win. They're trying to get to the mountaintop. They're not acting. Howie Roseman, their general manager, executive of the year in the NFL, in my book and a lot of other books, he's not thinking that they've won. He's thinking, man, how can I get this roster better? And that's what they've been constantly doing since they won Super Bowl 52. So, Jerry, I don't know what Jerry's looking at. They have salary cap restrictions, couldn't have a lot of movement in this free agency. They haven't gotten better since last year's team. Unless there's something going on in Dallas that we don't know about, that Dak has looked amazing in the offseason workouts. They've talked about talking to Dez about his role and potential salary reduction. That hadn't happened yet. He's signed a couple 2 and 3 receivers as far as that's their role. There are 2 and a 3. So I see a tremendous gap between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles and some other teams in the NFC.
Yeah, really.
Right, and the NFL free agency in 2018 is not like Major League Baseball free agency was in 2018, where a lot of really good players are still available a month into free agency, even if they do get Dez to take a salary reduction. What are you doing with that money? It's not as if there's these great players that, when Dez takes a $6 million pay cut, we'll go get that. I mean, I just did a back of the napkin thing here. The only position group that I think you hands down would rather have what Dallas has than what Philly has is running back. And that's because of Ezekiel Elliott. I think Zeke is such a special player, even though Jay Ajayi and what they've done in Philadelphia at that position, I respect it. But Zeke's a special player. I can't even say I would hands down rather have the Cowboys' offensive line. And here's why. We saw one injury on the Cowboys' offensive line when Tyron Smith is out. All of a sudden, the entire offensive line plays worse. Jason Peters went out. The Eagles were fine. Also, I like Jason.
The Eagles have 2 left tackles.
Right. I like Jason Kelsey at center. I like Brandon Brooks at guard. I love Lane Johnson at right tackle. And so even if you want to say, well, still the Cowboys have the better offensive line, but everything else, quarterback Philly, wide receivers Philly, tight end, backup quarterback Philly, tight end, no question Philly, defensive line, by a wide margin, Philly. Linebackers relatively close, but given Sean Lee's health concerns, Philly. Defensive backs, especially since they added Darryl Worley, Philly. How about this? Coaching and schematics, Philly.
And it's not even like Dallas didn't do anything. The Eagles did do things. The Eagles came off a Super Bowl and shored up their team, actually went out and kept working and tried to add pieces to their team when Dallas really hasn't, and the pool is obviously dwindling.
Right. If there's some question marks, you've been like, okay, what has happened? Okay, let's go to Philadelphia. Full disclosure, let's go Frank Wright. He left to be the head coach. Filippo left, the quarterback coach. He left to be the offensive coordinator in Minnesota. There have some... But I think those adjustments are easier compared to Dallas. Dallas made wholesale changes on their coaching staff, but basically having the same personnel. So they're telling the coaching staff, we're giving you the same personnel. We want you to get better results out of that. Also, add Mike Wallace to the receiving corps. You know, I think the receiving corps, I think Mike Wallace is a better receiver than Torrey Smith. So I think their receiving corps has a chance to be a lot better.
The D-line additions. How many players that Philly added would have been the best player Dallas added this offseason? Think about it like that. Philly's coming off the Super Bowl, the 13 wins. They were already well ahead of Dallas. Mike Wallace would have been Dallas's best free agent acquisition. Michael Bennett would have been Dallas's best free agent acquisition.
Yes.
I believe, I know you traded for Michael Bennett. I get that. Haloti Ngata would have been in the argument for Dallas's best offseason acquisition. I mentioned Darryl Worley earlier. Like, when Dallas's big star free agent they bring in is Allen Hurns. Like, and I like Allen Hurns as a player, actually. I think he's going to be better than he was in Jacksonville, but that gives you an idea.
And don't forget the signing of Chris Long for one more year. Look at the veteran leadership, the championship experience, the wealth of knowledge that they have. I mean, what's not a plan for at this point? Championships. I mean, everyone else in Philadelphia, there seems to be one common goal. It's amazing how you see the respect level. When people start talking about you in the off season, you know, that's out of respect. So it's nice. I'm for the people in Philadelphia that Dallas in the offseason, they will continue to be talking about them.
It's hard to say, well, the Eagles are going to repeat. They have what they had plus more. But so we put that aside. Does it feel like another 9-7 season for the Cowboys? I know you have Zeke back now for those 6 games you lost him, but is that, looking at this roster, is that what it feels like to you?
Listen, I think it is. If you were to tell me they're either going 9-7 or 13-3, I think they're closer to the 9-7 team than a 13-3 team. But I think the point that you both made early on is Dallas. I respect the idea that Dallas is concerned with Philly, much like the Rockets early in the year. Daryl Morey, what'd he say? We're obsessed with Golden State. Like, you put a target on the back of the best team, the champion.
But Daryl Morey also had the resources to go out. Yeah, I'm obsessed, but I'm also getting better.
Go out and do something about it.
Yes.
But when you realize, like, there's 5 teams in the NFC right now that I believe are clearly in a better position than Dallas. Philly, Minnesota, the Saints, the Rams, and I'm going to include Green Bay. Because once you get Aaron Rodgers back, like, we've seen what they do. And then, here's the group Dallas is in to me, with Carolina, with Atlanta, maybe San Francisco, but so throw San Francisco out. Carolina, Atlanta, Dallas. I listed 5 teams to me that are clearly ahead of them in the hierarchy, and then they're amongst those 3 teams right there. And we know, listen, I know we can't do this projection. One of those teams is going to be awful. There's going to be a team, maybe the Bears or somebody, all of a sudden is going to be great. We didn't see coming. But Dallas is in that a little slightly above the middle of the pack in the NFC. There's only 16 teams. I just told you 8 of them. Like, so Philly is right now the cream of the crop, but there's other teams between Dallas and Philly.
And those other teams, there's really not a book of how you're going to stop them. Minnesota, like, if you were facing their offense, you'd be like, man, I don't know what they're going to do. You know, they got the running back coming back. They got the wide receiver, Kirk Cousins. They can throw the ball. They're not going to be as conservative as they were. They got Green Bay. Like, how you stop Aaron Rodgers? Like, that's a mystery that no team has figured out. How you going to stop the Rams?
Yeah.
I know how to stop Dallas. Stop Zeke. So the league has a book on Dallas now. I thought after the 13-3 season, I told you, Nick, they'll come back down. They'll come back down about 3 games. They'll win about 10 games. They didn't get to that last year. I think they're about a 10-win season. So that's the kind of team that they have. Now, can they add a couple things? Either a good draft pick strategically. Can they pick up another veteran as we get closer to the mini camps and closer to training camp? Those things. This Dallas team is not a finished product. Some of these other teams, and I just believe when you have a book on someone, until they start throwing the ball and being effective throwing the ball, we know how to stop Dallas and beat Dallas. Those other teams, we don't know that.
Because it's not just about adding to this Cowboys team. You want Dak to have a big third year. You want Zeke to have a similar year that he had last year. So there are a lot of questions.
One thing to Dallas's credit, it's hard to play in Dallas. They haven't had a whole bunch of distractions. They haven't had the noise around the team that they've had maybe the last year and a half. So that right there might be worth something. That's worth watching. There's no noise. There's no bad news out of Dallas. So that right there, I'm sure, is refreshing for the players.
What are you guys doing at 10:24 this morning? How about at 10:42?
10:42, I'll be watching Tiger. At 10:24, I will be 18 minutes away from watching
That was
Tiger.
the original question.
Exactly.
I wanted to know who was going to be 18 minutes away from
watching Tiger Woods. You're going to watch with us, right?
Of course, obviously. Coming up, what does Tiger Woods have to do to be successful on day one of the Masters? It's day one of the Masters, by the way. Next on First and Spurs.
Tiger.
Our new topic now, Tiger Woods tees off at 10:42 this morning because it's golf and punctuality is everything. Woods will hit Augusta National seeking to win his 5th Masters and his first major since 2008. A lot's happened since 2008 as Tiger has attempted multiple versions of this comeback story. However, this one could be the last as he heads into round 1 of the Masters this morning as confident as ever. CeCe, what would you consider a success for Tiger today on day 1?
Well, I know you guys talk about me. You kind of make fun about my weather, all right? The weather in Augusta is going to be very nice today, all right? It's going to be a little chillier this morning. Tiger, I think, is the 12th group off. All the groups tee off of number 1, so in succession they go off. So it's probably going to be tougher to score later in the day when the wind kicks up. But if Tiger could shoot, and I know this through walking, I've walked a bunch of rounds with Tiger's family, Tiger's mom, Tiger's late dad, who was on the course, Tiger's agent. And one thing that they always tell me is Tiger gets very, very nervous at the beginning of tournaments. The first hole, the first 9 holes. So he's not the exuding confidence like people think. He's like a lot of normal people in these situations. And it takes him some time to calm down. If he's able to shoot under par, because this is not a tournament that you want to try to come back from. Tiger has done better when he's been in the lead. Now, he's played a great month of golf. So I believe he can shoot under par at the Masters. I believe 69. Par is 72. You should know as a sports fan, this is a big boys course, though. You have to hit the ball. You have to hit your driver off the tee. And if you start seeing Tiger Woods lay back, he starts hitting 2 irons off the tee, 3-wood off the tee, watch out because we want him to be aggressive. I believe he shoots 69, which is 3 under. I also believe on the first day, typically someone is going to shoot 67, 5 under. So you don't want to have to be chasing 7, 8 strokes, but it's important to be under par the first day and watch the first 9 holes. I believe that will be telling as far as Tiger's nerves and where his game is.
All right, so I want to get back to why it's particularly important at the Masters to be able to hit your driver off the tee in a moment. But about today's round specifically, this is something one of the newest members of our staff, Dave, who played some golf and brought this up in the morning meeting. I couldn't believe it. Tiger's played 20 rounds at the Masters. I'm sorry, 20 Masters tournaments. Day 1, he has only shot under 70 once. Only one time in those 20 Masters tournaments has he been under 70. His 4 wins, he shot 70, 70, 70, and then 74, actually, in his most recent Masters win back in 2005. So now the par is 72, so he's been 2 under most tournaments, 2 over the 1. Where he has made his work is Friday and Saturday. All of those wins, he's had either a 65 or a 66. One of those days, a couple of them, he had them both days. That is when he has really made up his ground.
What does that say? That he does come out a little cold when he starts?
It says exactly what CeCe's saying. It says that it's tough for him to score on those opening 9 holes. The first Masters he ever won, his first round, he went 40 on the front 9.
Yes, 4 over par.
30 on the back 9.
Yes.
6 under par. So if you see Tiger, as long as he is around, CeCe said 69, I'm not going to argue with him. I would have said 70. Right there, there is a path to victory for him, even if you do see a guy go out and shoot a 66. You do see
even if he has to play catch-up because the guy goes 500.
Put up a number.
And the reason why we haven't talked about it, why is there so much anticipation for the 2018 Masters? It's not only that Tiger Woods in the last month has come back and he's healthy, he's put himself in contention. It's not only that Phil Mickelson has won after a drought of several years. It's not that Bubba Watson has won. It's not that Dustin Johnson is back healthy, number one, that he's won. It's not that Roy McIlroy, he can finish the Grand Slam. It's not that Jordan Spieth, he's dominated the Masters but only won one of them. It's all of these things in one happening. So that's why I think it's very important for Tiger to shoot a number like that, because out of these superstar players that we've seen, a lot of these players have not played with Tiger at a major under the gun. And I believe this Tiger, you don't want to chase these guys down. You want to stay with them the whole way.
And I know you're going to talk about his hitting and what he needs to do, but there's also, we've seen a difference in Tiger and his approach to these tournaments at the beginning of them. Over the course of the last couple that he's played, he's changed from, I just want to be healthy and have fun, to, I want to win. I want to win the Masters, and that's very important.
The difference, I felt like the last few weeks, when he finished second at Valspar and then was in contention until the final few holes of the tournament after, he was playing to contend. He was playing to be in the conversation, and he is now saying, I am playing to win. Now, he was playing to win come Sunday of each of those tournaments,
yes,
but he was at a deficit because he had been conservative early on in those tournaments. All right, your point about not hitting 2-iron or even 3-wood off the tee and hitting your driver, because he will be able to reach greens in regulation even if he hits his 2-iron off the tee. But because of the way, you were talking about this before the show.
Yes.
Because of the way the greens are set up at Augusta, you want to be approaching with a 7, 8, 9 iron instead of a 4, 5, 6. Why?
Right. Now, Tiger, when he came back, and he might be able to get away with the 3-wood because he can hit it, especially if he can hit it from right to left. He can hit it almost as far as his driver. But he had to play conservative because he didn't have confidence in the 3-wood or the driver, so he had to play back. We saw that when he was trying to win the tournament, he laid back off the tee and had a longer approach shot, the longest approach shot.
72nd hole at the Valspar.
Yeah, so that approach will not work. He has to play not reckless, but he's got to play aggressive golf. And even if his driver's not there, he's got to hit it and try to work through it, because these greens are not meant. Now, the golf clubs, a 2-iron is straight up and down. So the loft on it, there's not a lot of loft. So as you go to it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there's more loft on the club. These greens are such undulation, hills, and mounds on the green also that you have to fly the ball high. So if you hit irons 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're not meant to be able to land soft and get close to the pin. If you hit 7, 8, 9, you can put the loft on it, the spin on it, that you can control it once it gets on the green and get it closer to the hole. That is, when you're watching him, watch the Tiger hitting off the tee. It's going to show you how he's feeling and if he can be aggressive.
You want it, Masters in particular, I know this is going to sound basic because you're like, oh, every golf shot everywhere you want to do this. But on your approach shot to the green, you want it as high in the air and to land as close to the pin as possible, as opposed to running it up, as opposed to dealing with, okay, I'll hit more of a flat shot and deal with it that way because of the way CC described the greens as. That's why being able to hit your 9-iron, the way you can hit your 9-iron is if you use your driver. So that's why, again, we've talked all week about this. How can Tiger win? Be accurate with your driver. That's how he can win this tournament.
All right, day one, 10:42 a.m. Say that a couple times so you actually remember it. Coming up, talk some football. RG3 is back in the NFL, but can he still play football after a year away from the league? That's next on First Things First. Time for some stories to start your morning. Deshaun Watson had a great rookie season that was cut short with a torn ACL. His head coach, Bill O'Brien, saw enough in Watson's 6 starts, says the Texans will overhaul the offense to suit Watson's skill set. Nick, good move to build completely around a second-year quarterback?
This second-year quarterback, absolutely. And, man, I hope it's successful, because I feel like there's been a lot of talented quarterbacks, potentially talented quarterbacks, that we didn't get to see their full potential because for a long time we were trying to square peg, round hole these guys. And if you see success with an offense geared around his specific skill sets, sustained success, then what does that mean for, well, a guy coming out in this year's draft like Lamar Jackson? What does it mean for other athletic quarterbacks that also can throw the ball really well? I hope this works out.
So, Nick, what it's going to look like, it's going to look like what we saw in those 6 games. they will emphasize a lot of deep passing. Even though Deshaun Watson, as a collegiate player, he's not effective throwing the ball deep. In the NFL, and especially with the type of wide receivers he has. Also, watch them to copycat a little bit what they saw with Nick Foles in the NFC Championship and in the Super Bowl. RPO, so he will have a read. It will be getting it out of his hand quick, just so he can continue to develop that rhythm. I expect big things from him in year number 2.
I agree.
All right, sticking with football, Dez Bryant's destiny in Dallas is still up in the air. Cowboys CEO Stephen Jones recently said that Dez and the team have yet to meet to discuss his future. The two sides are in a standstill over contract negotiations, and the team hasn't ruled out drafting a wide receiver. Cece, what does Dez's future in Dallas look like? Because it seems to change from day to day.
Well, I mean, I know this type of meeting. No one wants to have a meeting talking about your money. No one wants that meeting.
Unless you call the meeting. Unless it's the person getting paid calls the meeting. Sir, boss, I'd like to come talk about the money. That usually means you're asking for a raise.
Yeah, call me first before you do that, because I'll just tell you that's probably not going to end well. Nick, okay, I'm just going to give you, maybe since you look up to me just a little bit. All right?
Okay.
Dez's future's like Nick. It's short. Don't loan him no money. Dez got to concentrate on trying to get better. Whatever the money situation is, I would take a salary reduction. I believe he's worth more to the Cowboys. Tell them to give you some incentives. If I get a 1,000-yard season, which I haven't had, if I get 1,100, give me that back. If I get 1,200, if I get 10 touchdowns, give me that money back. I believe it should be worked out. Dez is more valuable for the Cowboys.
What I will say is this. The longer the Cowboys wait to have this uncomfortable conversation, the more, in my eyes, the leverage shifts towards Dez, because the more the wide receiver market dries up more. Is certainly if you wait until after the draft and you see if the Cowboys have or haven't taken a wide receiver. So, I mean, at some point, Dez's people will be able to say, what are you going to do with the money you're taking from him? Just put it in the owner's pocket? Like, the players are going to be gone. So if they want to have this conversation, they should have it sooner than later.
Jenna, you know, in relationships, you're better off just bringing it up as soon as possible. Ain't no need in waiting and putting it off, because it's inevitable. We got to have this conversation, Jenna.
I know. We just did, didn't we?
We got to talk.
I hate that. We need to talk. That's the worst. Moving on to baseball now. Giancarlo Stanton followed up his 5-strikeout game with a big day yesterday. He hit his 3rd home run of the season, a 2-run shot. Nick, he's now on pace for 81
Good job,
this
Jenna.
year. Thank you. Every day, baby. Every
Good
day.
job.
I'm just saying a couple of math things, and now I'm moving on.
Nice.
Following his lead, Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez each went deep for 2-run homers of their own. Yanks beat Tampa Bay 7-2. Cece, how dangerous is this Yankees lineup, especially that middle meat?
We know the lineup is dangerous, but how healthy can they stay? The bottom of the lineup, you know they're going to have to save them at some point. But also, how consistent can they be? We know it's powerful, but how consistent can they be? And when they hit some type of slump, how bad is that slump? But I'm a Yankees fan. I was one of the ones booing when he striked out 5 times. Yesterday he gets up to bat, he launches one to left center. That's great. But then he struck out 3 more times. So then I'm back like.
Listen, people got to know what they got with Giancarlo Stanton. He is pretty typically a 3-result guy. Like strikeout, home run, walk. Like, this is who he is. He's not a guy that's going to hit a lot of, opposite field doubles. Like this is who they added. Knowing who he was, we're excited to add him and pay him all the money they had signed with the Miami Marlins to. So you know who he is. It's the people behind him. Like, when he's the only bat in your lineup, as he was in Miami except for Yelich, like, then all of a sudden, if he has an 0-for-4 night, you're screwed. When you have Judge and Sanchez and then Didi,
and
what did he have? Had 8 RBI the other day. Like, you're going to be fine. This is the best lineup in baseball. The Astros might be the best team in baseball because of the pitching staff. This is the best lineup in baseball.
Love it. All right, moving on to hoops. The 1-seed Raptors beat the 2-seed Celtics 96-78. They kind of demolished them. Toronto stretched their lead in the East to 3 games with 4 to play. Nick, can the Raptors be a serious threat to Cavaliers in the East?
They can't be that, but I will give them credit, because last night was an important game. Like, I know Boston's shorthanded. Boston been beating folks shorthanded. They almost beat Milwaukee the day before. They beat a Utah team that was on a great run when they were shorthanded. So Toronto on a back-to-back after another devastating loss when Kyle Lowry had played his worst game of the year to win this game and win it. I mean, they only scored 14 points in the first quarter. They're on 20-14 after the first quarter. Then they played really well on both ends of the court afterwards. This basically locks up the 1 seed for them, so that's important. They avoid the Cavs until round 3. That's important, so good win for them.
Man, they had to win this game. And Boston being shorthanded the way they were in a 2-night span, they couldn't afford to lose this game. So Boston right now, to me, it's Manny Mannix yesterday talking about, oh, Cleveland better watch out for Boston. He must have jinxed them because this was not a good night for me. You could look on the court and you've been like, okay, who is that for Boston? Okay, now who is that for Boston? Okay, I don't know that player either.
Yeah.
I mean, they have some G League players out there playing.
What I will say is Boston right now is the 2 seed. I think they're hoping Miami falls to the 7. I think they'd much rather play Miami as the 7 than Washington as the 7.
Yes.
So just watch that as the last week of the season unfolds.
All right, lastly here, rumors are circulating that Lonzo Ball could be shut down for the season with a lingering knee injury, even though there's like a week left.
Yep.
Ball is averaging 10 points, 7 assists, 7 boards in his rookie year. Chris Carter, how do you evaluate Lonzo Ball's first season?
Well, you have to evaluate. You have to be very positive. I mean, you're looking at the rookie class and how all of them, for the most part, have struggled in some aspect. We've had 2 in Simmons, Donovan Mitchell. Those 2 are the highlight of this class. But if you tell me, okay, as a rookie, he's going to get 10, 7, and 7, like, there's some things in there that you can't teach. Like, you can't teach a kid to be unselfish. You can't teach a kid to be a floor leader. You can't make a guy rebound. We didn't know what kind of defender he'd been. He's been a positive as a defender. That's been a plus for him. So it's been a very good year. The Lakers, they can see moving forward, wow, this is the guy that we thought he was going to be. Maybe he doesn't have to necessarily change his jump shot, but he's got to be able to get in the gym to be able to be more consistent and to be able to get it off quicker. He's got to develop some more offensive weapons, finishing at the rim, some type of intermediate game or a floater game there in the lane. But I think that the Lakers, their coaching staff has been positive in the things that they've said. And I know that Magic Johnson is positive with his overall attitude and how he's dealt with some adversity. He believes that's going to make him stronger going forward.
There's a few things that are overwhelmingly positive for Lonzo. One is, you mentioned the 10, 7, and 7. Like, only 4 rookies ever have put up the stat line Lonzo put up their rookie year. It's Oscar, it's Magic, it's Ben Simmons, it's Lonzo Ball. Now, no one is saying he's going to be Oscar or Magic. I don't think he's going to be Ben Simmons either. But the filling of the box score, the being better than average at the non-scoring parts of the game as a rookie, that's very difficult. We see a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who I think is going to be an excellent scorer in this league one day. He may never, at his peak, be as good of a passer and rebounder as Lonzo is right now.
Yes.
So, like, that's a big positive for him. I'm going to say another thing that's a positive that has kind of been underrated the last month and a half, and I think a positive for him moving into year 2. The dad doesn't seem as relevant anymore. Like, when's the last time, I know on this show we try not to talk about LeVar, but any of these shows, like the dad doesn't move the needle as much to where you almost feel forced to bring him into a Lonzo discussion. So why am I bringing him up now? The Lakers are going to be going after major free agents this offseason. And if the level of noise from the father had stayed consistent from day 1 to now we're in game 79, I think that could turn off some free agents. That has not been the case. And so those things work in his favor, I believe.
I know the numbers are great, and I know his line is great, and it puts him up there with elite rookies that have gone on to have incredible careers. So why does it feel like he hasn't lived up to the hype? Like, why are we even having this conversation? How do you evaluate his first?
Because this is what we do. We build kids up to tear them down. Like, there was no way when Magic Johnson drafted him and said he will be in the rafters one day as one of the Lakers' great, that he was going to, there's no way, given the volume of information and noise that his family made, that he was going to be able to live up to that.
They all did him a disservice.
Well, that's here nor there, all right? We're evaluating the player, and the kid is a good kid. The Lakers organization, they like him. We can't control the hype, but when you look at it, what happens to rookies? You mentioned De'Aaron Fox. He was a great prospect coming in. What kind of rookie year did he have?
It's not like D. Fox was taking 20 picks after him, just a few picks later. Like, we talked about Malik Monk.
Yes.
Another top 10
in
pick.
Charlotte.
We hadn't talked about Malik Monk once all year until we showed that highlight yesterday.
He was in the G League.
Exactly. So the fair comparison for Lonzo coming into the league was not Magic. It was always Jason Kidd. And so let's just, if he is done with his rookie year, show them side by side. Their rookie years. Jason Kidd was a slightly better scorer. They were near equivalent passers, and Lonzo's a slightly better rebounder. Like, if he continues on the Jason Kidd trajectory, a guy who was one of the 8 greatest point guards in the history of the league.
Yeah.
Everyone will say that. It was a wildly successful career. Like, Lonzo did. He didn't exceed expectations, but I don't think he failed to meet realistic expectations either. What we didn't see coming was Donovan Mitchell and then Ben Simmons, the redshirt rookie, having these monster seasons along with Jason Tatum.
All right, let's move on to the NFL. Were you just thinking to yourself, you know, I haven't heard a lot about, in the last year, RG3. Well, the former rookie phenom quarterback is back on a team. Ravens are signing Robert Griffin III to a 1-year deal. Griffin wasn't on an NFL roster in 2017, played only 5 games in 2016. Both tremendous signs for a great 2018. CC, what do you think? Can he still be a productive quarterback?
I think he should be an adequate backup quarterback. How good he's going to be in the passing game, we just haven't seen him grow. We haven't seen his mechanics grow. He still has a fairly big windup. Now, when you start to become a mature quarterback, we forget that he ran a 4.3 because he can't utilize his speed since he got hurt his rookie season. So in trying to develop being a pocket passer, he hasn't had the type of accuracy that you want. But he is more than good enough as an athlete, as a thrower, to be a backup in this league. Like, he should have been in the league last year. With all the quarterbacks, this is how you continue to develop quarterbacks. You don't develop them by having them on the street. You develop them by having them on teams. RG3 is good enough. He was a starting quarterback in this league. I don't know why these guys, sometimes the league just gives up on them and they don't help cultivate them. I mean, I talk about him all the time. I mean, McCown for the Jets, I mean, Mike, at no point was he a starter. Was no point was he as good as RG3. But he can be a backup. But RG3 can't be a backup. So for me, it's just kind of puzzling. You know, you get better by getting reps. And him being out of football, I don't believe it helped him. But he should have been in the league. I don't know why he was out of the league.
Here, I think a few things led to him being out of the league. And this is, to me, a little bit of a puzzling move by Baltimore. And here's why. One is, if you just do a Google search, RG3 teammates, what you will find Google News is stories from 2014, 2015, and 2016 about different either anonymous or on the record or former teammates talking about how in the locker room, people don't love this guy. That is not typically what you want from your backup quarterback. Additionally, when he was a starter week 1 in Cleveland, I went back and watched how he hurt his shoulder because I had alluded to it yesterday. They're down 12. There's 3 minutes left in a football game in the fourth quarter. It's 3rd and 14. He's 6 yards short of the first down line. And he's on the out-of-bounds marker. And instead of just stepping out of bounds, he initiates contact. Coming off a major injury, he messes up his shoulder and misses 11 weeks. The other thing you want from your backup quarterback typically is the ability to stay healthy. So for those reasons, I understand why he is not the first person you call. Now, I can't justify Josh Johnson having 30 jobs over the last decade. I can't justify what you're talking about with Josh McCown. I understand that. But I do get why RG3, especially now that he's a year removed from football. I mean, there's the play. Like, I don't know what you're doing on this play. And then he stays in for the 4th and 3, and then he shows
that play
how
doesn't make you ineligible to play. No. And even some of the things you said about him, the reason why RG3 wasn't embraced in the locker room because he's a little bit different. His personality's a little bit different, but he's not a bad guy. He's a family guy. Now, his thoughts and everything might differ from some other guys in that locker room, but, man, you need to have some different thoughts from guys in that locker room. I know guys in that locker room, and a bunch of them are different. But we accept their differences, but sometimes we have a quarterback that he's a little bit different. We don't want to accept that. We accept all these other guys, they got major differences. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't have in common. But sometimes as the quarterback, we put too many eyeballs on them, and we just make too many excuses of why they shouldn't be there. They're just like anyone else on the team. If a guy's a backup defensive tackle, so what? He's a little bit weird. We accept him. But as a quarterback, I don't know why we do that to quarterbacks. But
isn't it a little bit more of an issue, just the fact that he tends to get hurt very, very often, and they're big injuries that keep him out for extended periods of time?
Okay, you telling me there's 100 quarterbacks in the league better than RG3?
No,
I don't.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
These other guys haven't played. All right?
Correct.
I mean, part of playing the game is guys are going to get hurt. But that doesn't eliminate you from being on a team.
The injury stuff is why, in my eyes, why he's not in a discussion for being a starter on a bad team. But the reason why for this particular team, I don't love the signing. I'm not saying RG3 doesn't deserve to be on a roster in the NFL. What I am saying is I think Baltimore needs to be preparing for life post-Joe Flacco. And this seems like it's an emergency quarterback to win a couple games if something happens to Flacco.
Do you think he could still play?
I mean, I don't think if he were the starter for my team, I would feel terribly about it because I don't think he can stay healthy. But Chris's point, and it's the point I bring up with Cap all the time, I think Cap's good enough to be a starter in this league. But even if he's not, you cannot convince me there's 90 guys better than him. I understand why you can't say there's 90 guys better than RG3. I think for this team in particular, I don't understand the fit. I don't understand him as a backup for a quarterback that seems to be closer to the end than to the beginning.
I believe they're going to draft a quarterback that would be the replacement for Flacco compared to going in free agency. Right now, you need arms to be able to throw. You need a guy that's been in the league, that has an understanding of the league. And we give all these other quarterbacks plenty of years to, just sit on the bench and come watch film. And they're going to get better. But RG3, he's not afforded that opportunity. And I believe that he's talented enough, all right? That's why you're coaching. You coach the kids to teach them how to play. That's what pro football is about. These guys aren't finished products. They got a bunch of bums that are quarterbacks. Don't nobody say nothing about them. You know the reason why they haven't gotten hurt? Because they can't play, and they haven't gotten in the game.
So let me ask you a question real quick, because we never talked about it, because it just wasn't a big topic. So were you bothered last year that he was out, that no one would give him a shot?
No, I wasn't bothered because I probably thought it was football related. It wasn't anything else off the field. I know Baltimore was one of the destinations that Kaepernick could have ended up. So no, it wouldn't have nothing to do with that.
All right. We'll take a break. Coming up, let's talk some basketball. Can the Spurs repair the relationship with Kawhi? Is that even possible? Next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. Chris Vance is here.
These things are staged. They're not natural.
I got to tell you.
He's staging the handshakes now.
Well, I almost shook his hand, but then I knew I was going to do it when the show started. I didn't want to do two handshakes in 4
It's okay. It's okay. I'm still buzzing from the 78 points Boston put up.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big one.
The old Mannix curse.
That was awesome.
Man, Mannix, I think, has a side deal.
This year, right?
That was awesome.
You got a side deal with Hotels.com, just getting people to book finals tickets in different cities.
I try to
kickback.
I can move the needle a little bit.
There you go. I like it.
That's great. All right, let's talk about that a little bit. But after missing all but 9 games this season and with only 3 games left to play, there's still plenty of time for Kawhi to return to the lineup, said nobody ever. You know the story. Medically cleared, yes. Played since January, no. He's drawn criticism from his coach and multiple veteran players. But according to Spurs guard Danny Green, who joined Chris Broussard on his podcast, the team has no issue with Kawhi.
The only person that really knows is Kawhi Leonard. I guess he had a setback. He had a couple of setbacks, and then he was still in pain. We had communication. We sat down. Some of us talked to him individually. We texted him. He's still very much a part of our team.
So you're in touch with him?
We're all in touch with him. We all text him. We're all in touch with him. He's still very much a part of our group and our team. We still have his back, whatever his decision is, what he's doing. From our team and from their perspective and standpoint, I can speak for most of them. There is no odds. Okay. We're not at odds with him.
So many different reports about so many different things and how both sides are really approaching this. Do you buy that the Spurs can still work it out with Kawhi Leonard at this point with the regular season all but done?
Oh, look, that's relevant commentary from Danny Green, because one thing I hear from other players who are not associated with the Spurs is they wonder if inside that locker room the Spurs feel like Kawhi quit on him. Like, they're in a playoff push right now, and Kawhi's not willing to push through it on the court. They don't know, but that's the question that they ask. Now, is it reconcilable? Let's say this first. I've seen worse. LeBron James and ownership in Cleveland reconciled after a bitter breakup years ago. I've seen worse. That being said, other teams right now, you saw Brian Windhorst last week reported that teams were kind of preparing offers. I've talked to multiple teams that are doing that exact same thing. And right now, teams are kind of using their relationships they have with people inside the Spurs organization to kind of probe a little bit, to ask, is this real? Are you going to put him on the block? Now, nothing definitive has come out of this yet. So it makes you think that maybe there is a sense in the Spurs organization that they're going to try to make something work. But the clock is ticking on this. The best chance for San Antonio to make a deal that gets them something real back in return is going to be this offseason. So if this thing is going to come to a head, it's going to happen July, August.
Right. I mean, that's a critical point because Kawhi has a player option after this year. Like if you trade for him mid-season, next year, if they try to make it work, it doesn't work, they trade for him mid-season, you're getting him for 30 games and the playoffs, and then he can go anywhere, right? So that is why if it were to happen, it would happen this offseason. The reason that I think that Kawhi has played his last game as a Spur and that it's not reconcilable is very simple. What did Greg Popovich say to LaMarcus Aldridge? What he said to him was, when LaMarcus Aldridge wanted a trade, he said very simply, all right, find me what did he say? Go get me Anthony Davis?
Yep.
It was essentially, find me a player better than you, find me good equal value, and I'll trade you. There wasn't value for LaMarcus Aldridge at the time. He was coming off a bad season. People didn't see this year coming from him. You weren't going to get equal value. You can get Kawhi would be the best player available via trade since when? Better player than Harden what we thought of Harden at the time. Like when Dwight Howard was at his peak and it seemed like he was available via trade. Like you will have teams essentially say, listen, here's the roster, here's our future picks. You build the package and we'll see if we can make it work. So the Spurs would be able to you never get full equal value for a superstar, but they would be able to get as close to it as you can come. And that's why I think it is that it won't be reconciled, because the Spurs don't have to reconcile it. They recognize and they know, man, if we just are stubborn and just stand pat, then he can walk in a year. Mm-hmm. Now he'd be forfeiting some money, a lot of money, because the Spurs can offer him that supermax extension. But Kawhi has the leverage in this situation, and from everything I'm hearing and everything I'm seeing, he doesn't seem to want to be in San Antonio after this year.
No, I thought a couple things that Danny Green said in the podcast there with Chris Broussard was, one thing he said was, most of the players, he said most of them, he didn't say all the players, he said most of the players are comfortable with Kawhi and what he's gone through. And the other thing that I thought he said was really important was Kawhi had a couple setbacks. Now, we haven't heard that. But, I mean, I know that because I know the people who handle Kawhi. So I'd be shocked if he played in San Antonio. Kawhi don't want to be in San Antonio anymore. And all the murmuring stuff that came out of the locker room, it's not helping their situation. So when you have a player like Aldridge, he didn't have the ability to be able to go out, and on the market at that point, he wasn't that valuable. For right now, for Kawhi, though, Kawhi is valuable. And I know that there are other players in the league that are intrigued about, wow, if Kawhi would go somewhere, what that domino piece, how it would affect the rest. I believe it would affect LeBron. I believe LeBron going to Los Angeles, him and Kawhi potentially being in Los Angeles is a real possibility. And if LeBron decided he want to take less money, LeBron, Kawhi, and Paul George playing with the Lakers. Now, that's what I believe he's going to leave San Antonio, and I believe that the Lakers are a potential destination for him.
Chris Mannix, why do you think it is that Kawhi Leonard doesn't want to be in San Antonio anymore? It can't just be the way the team handled his quad injury. Is there more to it? What are we missing?
There could be more to it. He's a very difficult nut to crack. Like he's not a very outspoken guy. He has a very tight inner circle. I'd almost compare him in some ways to Russell Westbrook in that regard. So you don't know. What you do know is that the handling of this injury issue has been a significant deal. It's been a far bigger one than I believe that most people around the league believe coming in. Look, as recently as 2 weeks ago, it was coming out of the San Antonio organization. He was going to suit up and play in that New Orleans game on a Thursday night. Now, he's gone. He's back in New York, or at least he was a couple of days ago, getting another opinion on that injured leg. So I think that's a big issue. And like we've talked about, the clock is real here. The opportunity to deal a player. And let's be honest, Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, and I think people sometimes have forgotten over the last year.
He was top 3 MVP.
He's a top 5 player in the NBA.
Yes.
That's a top 5 player just hitting the prime of his career that you can deal. So if you can get, you bring up the Lakers, but if you can get Boston to deal Jason Tatum and a pick, that's a real asset. I mean, a top 10 pick, respectively, for Kawhi Leonard.
Well, the thing about the pick is interesting because what people have to recognize is we have seen this amazing player development from San Antonio. But the last blue chipper they got was Tim Duncan. That's what happens when you win 50 straight games for 18 years. It's what happens when you make the playoffs for 20 straight years. Since Pop's been there, they've had 2 blue chippers, guys that we thought as blue chippers coming out of college. David Robinson, who obviously was there before Popovich was there, but Popovich helped develop him, and Tim Duncan. Both of those players reached 100% of their potential. You then have Kawhi Leonard, who coming out of San Diego State was not considered a blue chipper. The development helped turn him into it, and people had misgraded him in the draft. What would the Spurs do with Jason Tatum? What would they do with a guy that was considered a blue chipper, has proven to be that, and then an additional first-round pick? What would they get? What would we think of Brandon Ingram, who right now people are like, I get the scoring, I see it, but like what we've seen the Spurs turn the last pick of the draft, Manu Ginobili, into a potential Hall of Famer. Tony Parker, I think, was 29th pick of the draft, in full potential. DeJounte Murray, they get the most out of every player that gets there. So the idea of getting a blue chip prospect, which they haven't had in 20 years, has to be attractive.
And let's be clear, too. I mean, look, San Antonio's first preference here, from everything I'm hearing, is to find a way to make this work. There's skepticism that they can actually do it, but that's their first preference here. If that can't be done, though, this is almost an opportunity to kind of put some punctuation on the last 20 years. We've been wondering, when is the Spurs dynasty kind of going to end? Manu Ginobili might be gone end of the year. Tony Parker, who knows? This is their chance to kind of reboot the whole thing. I believe, last night's 8-point clunker notwithstanding, that Jason Tatum is a franchise player. You can build around him. You give the San Antonio Spurs, R.C. Buford, that staff, a top 10 pick, you could have 2 franchise players within 12 months to build around for the future. So I think you kind of have to look at that if you're San Antonio as an opportunity to reboot the whole thing.
All right, Cece, you had brought up LeBron. We're going to talk about where LeBron might end up. Chris, stick around. That and more.
Boston. We're just going to take LeBron to Boston. Let's just do that.
Were you sure?
Back here on First Things First with Chris Mannix. Chris, it's Thursday. That means it's time to guess where LeBron could end up next season. Cue the music. He's still playing at an MVP level in year 15. Now we've got players around the league chiming in on where he'll be in 2016. Spurs guard Danny Green, but he's been saying a lot lately, Danny Green. It says LeBron would fit in perfectly in San Antonio, while Blazers guard C.J. McCollum said that LeBron is heading to Philly, and that it's a bigger possibility, that is, than most people think. Chris, what say you? Which team is the best fit for LeBron next season?
Well, if you're talking about fit, I agree with C.J. McCollum, because the Philadelphia 76ers, you plug LeBron James as a small forward into that lineup right now, and they are the favorite next season to win a championship, because Ben Simmons is going to improve, Joel Embiid's going to improve. We assume Markelle Fultz will be able to make a shot at some point from
Markelle Fultz has looked good.
He took his first three-pointer, and that didn't look good.
Okay, no, his jump shot, but he's looked like a competent player otherwise.
He's got a great ability to probe the paint. Anyway, they keep getting better. But more importantly for LeBron, Philadelphia allows you to age gracefully, because in Philadelphia, you could step into that team and be the alpha right away. But as he hits his mid to late 30s, and as those young guys start to improve, you can get Embiid taking over, Ben Simmons taking over. All these guys can become the alphas of that team, while LeBron kind of becomes second, third option as in his late 30s. Now, my one question would be, how in the hell do you afford that if you're Philadelphia? That's like 4 potential max contract guys or close to it that you have on the roster.
You don't, when you say afford it, they would, salary cap wise, they could sign him next year because they let it go. They have the space, but you mean eventually
down the line
you're paying a bunch of guys $40 million. It's a good problem.
Yeah.
What you talk about age gracefully. This is why when KD's decision was coming up, I was the one person saying, anyone think about Minnesota? Like, could he go to Minnesota? And the reason was, and at the time I thought Wiggins was better than he's ended up being, but I said, KD gets there, he's instantly the best player, and then in 5 years, he's the second best player, and Karl Anthony Towns is the best player. And then in 7 years, he's the third. You know what I mean? That is the exact same progression.
Of course, you play for Tibbs, and you'd be playing like 38 minutes a game.
It's a great point. That maybe for a lot of reasons, KD not going to Minnesota probably the right decision for him. But I like that idea of it, and that's the case against Houston. The question, if we're talking about Houston versus Philly, is do you trust Embiid's health or Chris Paul's age more? Because Chris Paul, while he's been in the league a year less than LeBron. He's older than LeBron. He's also an undersized point guard, and we know those guys don't typically age too gracefully. So I've been saying CeCe was the first person I heard on television mention Philly seriously. It got me thinking about it a lot, and so that is now where I think is the best fit for him, even better than Houston because of the age and gracefully thing. But the team that I haven't mentioned, that you didn't mention, but was the team that seemed to get this whole thing started a year ago, is the Los Angeles Lakers. And that's a team, CeCe, you've been talking about a lot lately in regards to LeBron.
Yeah, and also I think you have to look east and west. I think that when guys make decisions like this, because LeBron has dominated the East, I think that he'll pick a team or two, and I believe that will be Philadelphia and Cleveland if he decides to stay in the East. If he decides to go west, I believe at the top of that, Houston and Los Angeles. And I just believe the overall pool of Los Angeles, Magic Johnson, and the potential of the players that he can bring there, that is real. And I just know that Houston is interested in LeBron and having his services. It's just a matter of what he wants to do. I love the fact that you're talking about aging gracefully. And also I believe that there's a certain part of LeBron that's different than KD. KD wants a laid-back atmosphere. He just wants to talk about basketball. I believe that LeBron, the mentoring part, this next part of his career, I believe is going to be very important. Now, he wants to play with good players, but his ability to be able to give that basketball knowledge to other good young players, I believe that's more attractive than maybe potentially playing with the Kawhi or someone like Paul George, playing with Joel Embiid, playing with Simmons, and the overall interaction that LeBron would have in the role in their life. I believe that's important to LeBron. I believe he'll look at something like that, Jenna, as he decides to make this next decision.
Do you think conference or what side of the country matters at all to LeBron? Would he rather be the best player in a, we'll call it a weakened conference, or does he want to go out and be competitive in the next couple of years?
LeBron makes no secret of his desire for a great legacy. Like, he's very open about that these days. Now, what's the one way he can burnish that legacy? It's to win championships. He's probably, best case scenario, he probably adds another L to his finals resume this year. I mean, look, let's be real. He's got, like,
I'm with you.
Like, come on, even you can't.
And that doesn't help his resume.
That doesn't help his resume.
So you have the best case scenario is the same as the worst case scenario. Because they've already made the finals, so the best and worst case scenario is the same. You did a loss in the finals.
So,
got it. Go ahead.
We'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
But if he's looking to win championships, long-term conference does matter. And that's why Philadelphia makes more sense. Look, he's going to have to contend with Boston because the Celtics, even if they maintain the status quo, they're going to have a very good young team that's going to be solid over the next few years. But Philadelphia, Simmons, imagine Simmons with a jump shot. Embiid, I actually believe Embiid's health problems are behind him. Last year, it was the meniscus issue. The foot has not been a problem in like 2 years. So
that was the major one.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Because those feet are tricky, especially with 7-footers.
Well, I want to talk about the legacy thing just for a second, because I know for a fact that there is a team that will recruit LeBron. They are not yet, because that'd be tampering, and of course they wouldn't.
Yeah,
but that will recruit LeBron, that is out west, that is going to make the legacy pitch this way. Fair or not, people hold those finals losses against you. If you go out west, you might not make every NBA Finals. But when you do, if and when you do make the finals, you will be the heavy favorite. Like, going out west might prevent some more finals losses from piling up as opposed to staying out east. Now, I don't buy into that logic because I think making the NBA Finals is a better accomplishment than losing in the second round. But I'm a man on an island there. CeCe, you talk about the finals record. Our pal Skip talks about the finals record. Everyone.
Because the greatest players in the world, they can have such a dominant presence on a basketball. It's not baseball. It's not football. Like, they can dominate the game.
Yeah, but how many of those finals losses, and I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but how many of those finals losses do you really hold against him? Like, I think one, that first year in Miami, they should have beaten Dallas. These other series, they were just outgunned. Beginning in 2007, they were completely outgunned by better teams. I don't think LeBron, I agree with you, in basketball.
You know the reason why I keep track of them? It's because they keep him scoring, they keep him track of them.
Yeah, look, they are. But, here's something for LeBron. In the East, you stay in the Eastern Conference. When was the last time? You have to go back to, like, the Russell Celtics when a guy could make the finals in, like, 10, 11 consecutive years. You make the finals this year in Cleveland. You go over to Philadelphia. You might be back in the finals again next year. You just keep those runs going. That's an accomplishment.
Listen,
it's not the same, but it's an accomplishment.
You got to go back to the Russell Celtics for a guy doing it 5 straight times that's not LeBron James. Just one last point real quick. If LeBron's serious about playing until he's 40, if he were to go to Houston, he then probably has to change teams again at some point if he wants to keep competing for a championship. The Lakers or the Sixers are the two places where you theoretically it would be his last.
He's going to try to get on Jordan's corner. He's going to join the Wizards.
Look, to bring it back, though, quickly to San Antonio and why I think they're in the mix here. And this was before the Kawhi stuff happened. This is all things might have changed as a result of this. But people in LeBron's orbit have often kind of told me that LeBron craves playing for a great coach.
Yes.
And he has not had that opportunity yet in his career. And Greg Popovich is the only great coach out there. Now, he's not going to play for Phil Jackson for many different reasons. Doc Rivers, not quite on that level.
No, and he's not playing
Pop's
for Brad
the guy.
Stevens.
No,
Right.
Pop's the guy. And the chance to play for Pop, I think that means something to LeBron James.
Good conversation. Chris, thanks so much, as always,
pleasure.
for joining us. Coming up, an all-pro NFL player is campaigning for Odell Beckham to join him next on First Things First. All right, moving on to Odell Beckham. Remember the days when players didn't try to recruit you over Twitter? Neither do I. Jarvis Landry started it. Todd Gurley got in on the fun before the Rams traded for Brandon Cooks. The latest to get in on it on Twitter recruitment, Jags cornerback Jalen Ramsey. He sent out this to OBJ. Jerry and Prime used to go at it and make each other better on a daily. Hashtag I'm just thinking out loud. Hashtag I'm thinking greatness, though. CC, would OBJ be a good fit with the Jaguars? You actually were the first to bring this up yesterday. It was interesting.
With Tom Coughlin, him running the football operations there in Jacksonville, they have a need at wide receiver. They do have Jalen Ramsey and some other personalities on that defense that I believe OBJ would fit in nice with. Yes, they got a quarterback they're not paying $25 million to over a long period of time. Now, he's not as good as people would like him to be, but I guarantee you if he had OBJ, he'd get a lot better in a hurry. Their ability to be able to run the ball down people's throat. This offseason, what did they concentrate on? They went out and got the best guard in football, going to get him from Carolina, made him the highest paid guard. They're getting ready to mash people to death. And as a wide receiver, when you can run the ball, they commit all those people to the line of scrimmage. It's easy because it's either one guy or a little bit of safety help. That's all they can do. So I think it would be a great fit for need. I think it'd be a great fit for the money and the type of compensation OBJ is looking for and the ability to be able to play in the AFC. I believe that he would enjoy that playing in Florida on a natural surface.
Real quick, before I get to my thoughts on this, is there a real thing to also he and Jalen Ramsey, iron sharpening iron, as Odell put it, like in his tweet back, that two great players going against each other? I'll ignore the fact that Jalen Ramsey compared himself to the greatest cover corner ever in Deion Sanders. Is there anything there to you?
Jalen is that kind of good. He can compare himself, and he's from Florida State. He can compare himself to Prime. To me, Deion Sanders is the greatest DB that's ever played in the NFL. It does help. But one of Odell's problems with the Giants was they would not let him practice a lot. They wouldn't let him compete in practice. Odell realizes that was not making him better because they were concerned about him getting hurt. When you go down to a situation like Jacksonville, it's very competitive. The practices a lot like Seattle, so Richard Sherman and those guys. So, yes, there is some truth and there is some validity to having great corners opposite of a great receiver. The practice time, the reps are that much better.
All right, so I also want to level set something here because I think it'd be an interesting fit, and I think the Jags, it's a piece. They can't get a better quarterback, at least right now. What they can do is give the quarterback as many weapons as possible. They draft Leonard Fournette. They get him the best offensive lineman available on the market. They upgraded the defense last year. This would be the one piece, especially after losing Allen Robinson to a torn ACL and then losing him to free agency, lost Allen Hurns to free agency. All this would make sense. But I do think it's noteworthy. So Odell's new offensive coordinator, his offensive coordinator, Mike Shula, came out and said he's a vital piece of our offense. We have heard Odell's current teammates speak highly of him. We're yet to hear a player outside of the league tweet something along the lines of, don't want Odell here, all them damn distractions.
Well, who says that? When was the last time a player said, we don't want this player on our team? We hear the Von Millers, we hear... Does that happen a lot, where you hear players dissuade
I feel like
players
we
from
heard
coming
that
somewhere?
we heard that some with RG3, which was one of the issues I had with the signing in Baltimore. But I think a more fair question is there's a lot of guys who were free agents. He's not even a free agent. I haven't seen anyone recruited, aside from Kirk Cousins, the way OBJ is being recruited. So I say all that to say this. I know the ownership doesn't necessarily like answering questions about Odell. Doesn't seem like there are players around the league worried about the things we're worried about with Odell. Seems like whichever team gets him, those teammates would be excited about getting him, that he would be a welcome addition to their locker room.
Jenna, you're right. Nick, in that you're wrong. Even though you might recruit a guy, there are concerns. I guarantee you Jalen Ramsey would have not been happy with the boat trip. Guarantee you that, all right? Guys don't say that on Twitter, but guys are trying to win. And when you add that type of talent to the locker room, they're not expecting to bring no distractions. They're talking about just the football player. But there are distractions that come with it.
Okay, I got something to say about that, but we have Jay Wright coming up, so I'll wait. We can talk about this.
Yeah, I've been in the NFL locker room for 16 years.
I understand that. I understand that. I can still.
And I know a lot of guys in the locker room.
I get all that. Well, we can still discuss this more later.
No problem. Jenna, you're right.
Marinate in the moment.
He was right yesterday.
But today?
You're right.
Marinating. Coming up, national champion head coach Jay Wright joins us next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. So on Monday, Villanova won its second national title in 3 years. Jay Wright became one of 3 active coaches to have won multiple titles. And he joins us this morning. Coach, good morning. Thank you for getting up and hanging out with us. And congratulations, first off the bat. We love having you on the show.
This is awesome. Congrats.
Thank you, guys. Good to be with you.
All right, Coach, was there a different feel to this one than the first one a few years ago? How do you compare the two?
Yeah, it's totally different. First of all, Chris Jenkins hits a shot the first time you're in shock, and it's complete pandemonium, and you hadn't done it before, so you don't know where to go. People are pulling you, go to the podium here, do this, do that. This one, we got to get the guys, the starters off the court. You got a great, special moment there with Phil Booth, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, our captains. That's one of my favorite things. That hug when those guys come off the court still in the middle of the game is special. And then you kind of know what you're doing afterwards, so you really get to enjoy it. And one of my favorite things was we had a lot of our former players, Tim Thomas, Kerry Kittles, Ryan Arcidiacono, Chris Jenkins, Josh Hart, Randy, for all those guys up on the podium with us. That was really special.
Hey, Coach, did it surprise you? Now, we had you in studio here before the Big East tournament here in New York. Did it surprise you, though, that how this team came together, that you were able to dominate all 6 games in the tournament? I know as a coach, it's a little more relief at the end of the game getting your starters in there compared to getting a buzzer beater. But did that give you more satisfaction, too, how mature and how the team responded during the tournament?
Well, I thought when you said that it surprised you, I thought you were going to say that I went back to the tie bar, because after you told me to go away from it.
I'm going to get to that later on, Coach.
I went away from it, but I had to go back. I'm sorry. But I want to answer your question. Yeah, now that it's over, it really did surprise me, how effective and efficient we were. When you're in it, as you know, as a player, you don't have time to really look back at the last game because you're preparing for the next game. And you always think that next game you can get beat. So you're so focused on that. But now that it's over and you look back at the scores and the games, it really did surprise me. But what it taught us is that we actually did get to we were playing our best basketball. I really feel like after the last game, we were tired, but there was a part of us that thought, you know what, we could go back to work and keep getting better. We love this process of getting better.
And the way you guys won the national championship, to me, it was perfect. Not just because you guys won it comfortably, but the best player in the country this year, Jalen Brunson, doesn't have a great game. Amari Spellman doesn't have a great game. And what happens? You guys, okay, all right, next man up to a degree. Dante DiVincenzo, I know he's a sub, but he has been playing essentially starters minutes this year. He comes in, not only does he have 18 in the first half, the school I went to had a kid do that in the first half national championship game once, Jerry McNamara. He had 0 in the second half. Dante came back out in the second half. You put him back in less than a minute in, and he has another 13 in the second half, especially some critical baskets when Michigan seemed to trying to get within arm's reach of you guys. How were you surprised by what Dante did while you're watching it? The look on some of the faces of your players was another shot. What was going through your head when you were watching what Dante did?
Well, you're right, Nick, about Jalen was in foul trouble, and it's the beauty of our team is Jalen didn't go into the national championship game saying, okay, I'm National Player of the Year. I want to get mine. You know, he went into the game saying, we got to defend and rebound. He was really leading us defensively. Mikal Bridges got hurt. He got a knee into his hip about 5 minutes into the game, and we weren't really sure he was going to be able to continue. And he just defended and rebounded and did the little things. Still got the quietest 19 points ever. But Dante has done that for us during the season. There was a game we played Butler where Eric Pascal was out of the game. He was hurt. He didn't play that game. Phil Booth had a broken hand. And Dante had 30. He almost had a triple-double, 39 and 9. And so no one on our team was really surprised because, like you said, he played starter minutes all year. He was our sixth starter. But there's still a part of you that when you're watching him do it in the national championship game, it's unbelievable. It's pretty magical.
Coach, as you go through this tournament, as you said, a lot of it, it's a blur to you because you're playing through it. You got the next game coming up. You don't have a chance to really sit and think about what just happened. Now that you've taken a step back and you have a moment, have you thought about what was your favorite part or what stood out for you the most over the course of this tournament up till the very end?
You know what, Jenny? You're exactly right about that. And when you're going through it, it is a blur. For instance, today, we have a parade in Philadelphia today, and there's so many things going on in Philadelphia when you're playing, but you're not there. Essentially, for a month, you're gone. So you don't see anything that's going on back here. You're in your little world. And now you do get back to look back at it. I don't know if there was one special moment, but there was little. In the West Virginia game when we were down 6 in the second half, and we got a timeout, and just to see how the guys responded in that timeout, how we came back out of that. We actually had a 5-point possession right after that, got it to 1. You realize that was a really important part. The Texas Tech game, which was a real ugly game, we couldn't score on them. They're a great defensive team, and we just defended and rebounded, was really enjoyable. And the way we shot it in the Kansas game was just out of this world.
Right.
That was a fun experience.
Hey, Coach, after 2 national championships, most coaches have to fight against complacency. You got to fight against people recruiting against you, telling people different stuff about your program. You got more wins than anyone in college basketball the last 4 years. What's the maintenance program, Coach? How do you maintain that success? Because I know you and your staff have installed one or definitely thought about one.
Yeah, definitely exactly where our heads are right now, Chris, is where do you proceed from here? And what we try to do is not try to make our decisions to keep our culture pure and not make our decisions based on maintaining the same level of success. We feel like if we keep our culture pure, maybe we don't win as many games, as we did this year, but we keep the culture pure. That gives us our best chance to consistently win. But if we're just trying to get short-term decisions to get as many wins next year, eventually that's going to come back and hurt us. So now that's easier said than done, but that is the challenge.
And, Coach, I know you talk about your players. You keep the focus on them, and we don't have a lot of time here. I just want to say this to you and get your response. Will you take a moment to think about what this is for Jay Wright? Only 3 guys coaching in your sport have multiple national championships. 25 months ago, people that do this type of job were questioning, what's going to get out of the first weekend? What's going on? All these great. And now I'm going to say it because you won't say it. Start preparing the Hall of Fame speech. Have you let any of that sink in for you? Because you should.
Well, I appreciate that, Nick, but I honestly purposely don't. I know when I sometimes talk to people in the media like yourself, I answer it, but I purposely put it out of my mind because it doesn't do me any good in trying to get better. I hope someday when I retire, I will stop and look back on it. But I as I was saying to Chris, I really enjoy not thinking about that stuff and thinking about our culture and our guys. Right now, we could have 5 guys leave early and declare for the draft. So I want to help them. And then I want to make sure that we have guys coming in behind them that might not necessarily be as good as they are right now, but fit our culture at Villanova. And I really enjoy that. And the time I would spend thinking about that stuff would deter me from doing a good job.
Coach, you've been a great friend to the show this season. We've loved having you on. We loved you getting up this morning to talk with us. We're so happy for you and your program. Please come back and join us next time you're in New York.
Thank you, Coach.
I definitely will. We love the show, guys.
Awesome. All right, Jay Wright joins us this morning. Congratulations to you. Back here, we're going to take a break. On the other side, we'll get back to Tom Brady and the Patriots next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. Chris Canty is on the show with us this morning. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good, Jenna. How are you this morning?
I'm great.
Good to hear. Glad you're doing well. Jenna likes to laugh at jokes from 3 days ago, so the audience might be confused. Let me fill them in. Chris Canty said Jenna's always awkward when he introduces her, when she introduces him, and now she has tried to lean into that, but unfortunately a lot of the audience doesn't know that. Now they do. Now they're caught up. Now we can talk some football.
So the dust
Appreciate
has
that, Nick.
settled
No
in
problem.
England just days after the Brandon Cooks trade went down. Some think it's a tough loss for the Patriots. After all, last year, Cooks had over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Others aren't as convinced. Apparently, Tom Brady thinks that production is easily replaceable. According to reports, Brady was, quote, not sad about the Cooks trade. All right, Chris, will the Pats miss Brandon Cooks, or is he a guy with his production that you could easily replace in New England?
Well, they traded for him for a first-round pick, so they saw some value in the player. They were trying to sign him to a contract extension. And though I hesitate to say a team won't miss a 1,000-yard receiver that gave him 7 touchdowns, the New England Patriots won't miss Brandon Cooks in terms of production. They just won't. They'll find a way. Now, it might look different in terms of how the offense is able to manufacture yards and points, but if you look at what they've done this decade, they've had a top 5 scoring offense every year this decade. So the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels, they'll find a way to be able to replace what Brandon Cooks brought to the table. Now, he was one of their most reliable players last year, didn't miss any games, didn't miss any practices, but when you look at some of the pieces that they're going to get back this year, you're going to get Chris Hogan back. Remember, he missed some time with the shoulder injury. Julian Edelman will come back from the ACL. Rob Gronkowski, hopefully healthy. So those elements coming back will make it a little bit easier to mitigate the loss of Brandon Cooks.
Also, I believe in the Super Bowl, we talk about Malcolm Butler not playing in the Super Bowl. If Brandon Cooks don't get knocked out of the game, I believe that New England's going to win that game because they did not have a deep threat. They missed his overall productivity when he left the game. So, yes, over the course of a season, but I know in that Super Bowl, man, when he went out, they had to change things the way they're doing. New England has done this. There are interchangeable parts, all right? But his speed can't be replaced. They have not had a deep threat since Randy Moss. Now, I don't know where the report came that Brady was happy. That's not something typically with Brady that he lets out, because he's lost good friends to that team, and information didn't come out of the locker room. So I don't know how much credibility I put to the report that Tom Brady was not mad. Yeah, was not sad that losing Brandon, because he's not that type of person. But we have seen it. They moved on from Wes Welker. They moved on from Randy Moss. They moved on from Wes Welker. Last year, Edelman got hurt. They went on without skipping a beat when Gronk was hurt. They replaced Gronk's productivity. So to think that they can't replace Brandon Cooks' productivity, and what I like about New England, stay true to form. Don't sign a guy to a bad contract. And that's what they were able to avoid in trading Brandon Cook.
Ooh, I'm very surprised by what both you guys are saying here. Well, I'm not going to say you're wrong as much as I want to set the context, though, of everything. They did want to keep Brandon Cooks. They just didn't want to keep him at the money that he believes he should get, and probably the money Los Angeles is going to give him. Additionally, they didn't trade Brandon Cooks for nothing. They traded him for a mid-first-round pick. I don't know if they make that trade, even if they can't come to contract terms with him, if they don't lose Nate Solder. I think there was a bit of cauterizing a wound here where it's like, man, we lost our left tackle. There's no left tackle in free agency we can go get. We're sitting at pick 31. We don't know if the left tackle is going to be available there. Let's see how we can go get him.
First of all, I think they lost Brandon Cook before Nate Solder was lost to free agency. They offered him a contract. All right? They cut off negotiation. When that negotiation was cut off, he didn't accept that. Then they knew they were going to get off of him.
Well, but there's a difference between knowing you're going to get off of him and trading him for his deals up. Malcolm Butler, they knew they weren't bringing him back, but they knew they weren't going to give him a contract extension when he rejected their offer last offseason, but they still brought him back for the final year of his deal. That was an option for Brandon Cooks. $8.5 million, go play this season. And you bring up how they've overcome some injuries. That is where I think the loss of Cooks could be the most damaging. They were able to overcome Julian Edelman's knee injury this preseason. One of the reasons they could, they had Brandon Cooks. Your top two receiving threats now are Julian Edelman, 32 years old, post-ACL, and Rob Gronkowski, who does have an injury history.
Tom Brady's throwing to him, too. Let's not forget that.
Of course. Listen, and your point about the 10 straight years of a top-5 offense, I'm not discounting that. And I'm not saying the sky is falling in New England. What I am saying is, with the loss of Brandon Cooks and with my lack of faith in general of rookie wide receivers, particularly this rookie class, the way it's graded, I don't know if they are set up now to overcome an injury the way they were last year. Like, you know what I mean? If Julian Edelman goes down again, if Gronk goes down, at some point, the people you're throwing to has to matter, right? Like,
no, it does have to matter.
It hadn't mattered in New England.
It does matter to a degree, but like CC says, they have interchangeable parts. So they're responsible for being able to operate the offense. All of the receivers can play multiple positions, which is a flexibility that most NFL rosters don't have. Brandon Cooks wasn't that guy. He wasn't. He was a deep vertical threat. That's why he led the league in receptions of 20-plus yards downfield, him and DeAndre Hopkins. But when you start looking at how Bill Belichick has been able to piece this thing together over the years, you see Chris Hogan, he was able to be a deep threat in that AFC Championship game 2 years ago against the Steelers. Although he doesn't have the athletic skill set that a Brandon Cooks has, he was able to be productive, and that's based on the scheme that Bill Belichick runs. So in a way, he's going to find opportunities for these guys to push the ball down the field. You just don't know what it's going to look like with the group of guys that they have coming back.
Chris, if you factor in both what Chris and Nick are saying, what do you think the Patriots' bigger plan is with the draft picks they're piling up, with their ability to get rid of Brandon Cooks without seemingly a worry, with them being able to get rid of Nate Solder without a worry? What do you think the bigger plan is that they might do with these draft picks?
Well, Jenna, it's a quarterback-driven league. So the position of quarterback and the positions that directly affect quarterback play have to be prioritized. So when you look at the New England Patriots, who's going to be the successor for Tom Brady? The Patriots in a position to be able to get a guy in the draft. Maybe not one of the top 4 quarterbacks, but one of those guys, Mason Rudolph, Lamar Jackson, Luke Falk, somebody of that ilk. And then you start talking about the tackles in this draft. Nick, you mentioned them yesterday. Mike McGlinchey, Colton Miller, Connor Williams, somebody like that. And then, of course, pass rusher. Who are they going to have that's going to be able to hit the quarterback consistently when they get one-on-one opportunities in pass rush?
Right.
Those have to be prioritized for New England moving forward.
One thing about Cooks you have to realize, I believe he's limited as a wide receiver. I believe he's a track guy playing football. He has straight line speed. He's not great without the ball. I mean, great running with the ball. He's not great as a reverse guy. So last year they traded for Philip Dorsett. Him and Brandon Cook have a very similar skill set as far as speed. Maybe they're going to put Dorsett, have more of an influence on the offense. But also, I look for Hogan to move back outside as the starter. I look for also Malcolm Mitchell, who was hurt last year, who was had productivity to the 2 previous years. I look for him to move back outside. And I like the fact, man, stay true to form. Don't sign guys to contracts that are going to throw off your roster. There's no way they can sign Nate Solder to a contract that's going to pay more than Tom Brady. There's no way they can sign Cooks to a contract that's going to pay him as much as Tom Brady. So I believe that productivity, especially from the wide receiver, I'm concerned about their offensive line. All right? They always talk about Dante Scarnecchia, the great offensive line coach. You need talent on that offensive line. So that's what I'll keep my eyes on this offseason.
All right, Chris, stick around. Coming up, can the Cowboys knock the Eagles off the top of the NFC East? Jerry Jones thinks so. That's next on First Things First. All right, sticking with the NFL, Cowboys finished 9-7, missed the playoffs last season. Eagles finished 13-3. They missed literally nothing last season, yet Jerry Jones says, hey, there's not that much of a gap between the two teams. CC, how big of a gap is there between the Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, there's a certain amount of reality. And I never won a Super Bowl. So I've been chasing a lot of teams, chasing Jerry Rice, chasing the Cowboys, chasing Green Bay. In Philadelphia, was chasing the Giants. They won. Chasing Washington Redskins with Joe Gibbs. They won. So I feel like I have a great perspective on analyzing where a team is and actually where my team was. And, man, I always made a mistake, man, Chris. I always thought we was a lot closer to them than we really were. It was kind of like that little sign in your mirror. It said, objects in the mirror.
Closer than they appear?
They're closer than they appear. Like, they are not that close to Philadelphia. They were no more close than we were to Dallas Cowboys or the San Francisco 49ers. Only time we got close to them is when we went out and got Moss. That's when we got closer. And that's when I knew, man, it wasn't the difference between how far we behind them. It's, man, right now we can play with anyone. And they did that a couple of years ago with their draft. That's how they got their quarterback, and that's how they got Z. What have they done since then? The offensive line, in the last 2 years, they haven't gotten better. Right. We could say that last season, as that unit, that was the worst season that they've had. They couldn't add anyone in free agency this offseason. So, no, what Philadelphia has done, adding to that, what Howie Roseman has done, adding these little pieces, Mike Wallace, Chris Long coming back another year, Bennett trading him from Seattle. I mean, how would you like to have maybe a 7th or 8th defensive lineman be, Haloti Nada?
How about that?
Yeah.
What about that? I mean, a silent assassin in your locker room.
Yep.
Like, so, Jerry, I've been doing this a while. Hey, Jerry, you're a lot further away from them than it actually really appears, and you need to be more concerned about some of them other teams in the NFC, too, just besides the Eagles.
Yeah, the New Orleans Saints and the Minnesota Vikings, and we see the Los Angeles Rams are staffing up as well.
And I'm pretty sure Aaron Rodgers is going to play this year.
Pretty sure he's going to be back. Chip on his shoulder, literally, I guess. But when you start looking at the two teams, the Cowboys and the Eagles, I think the separation is clearly defined in the caliber of defense that they're bringing to the table. I mean, you can make an argument for the skill position groups. You can make an argument at the offensive line positions. I think both of those could be considered washes. But when you look defensively at what the Philadelphia Eagles are bringing to the table, their front seven is about as good as anybody in football. And the depth that they have up front. See, when it comes to playing good defense, you have to have good depth up front. And when you have the glut of pass rushers that they do, add Michael Bennett to a group that has Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and all of those guys, Derek Barnett, the rookie that we saw last year, they're going to be a tough out for anybody. The Dallas Cowboys.
Question for you, Chris. Sorry to cut you off, but I think it's important because I never won. After you won that championship, did that make y'all better as a team? Like, how does that transfer into what you can do moving on? Because now you know you're a winner compared to, I think we're pretty good.
Exactly. It's the difference in psychology, right? We think we can versus we know we can. We've done it before. Having that experience makes a difference. But that being said, it's hard to eat when you're full. So we'll see if there's a Super Bowl hangover with the Philadelphia Eagles. Can Doug Peterson's coaching staff get these guys ready to go again because you have a condensed offseason? But back to the comparisons with the defense and the defensive lines, when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, it's like they playing spades with pass rushers. They got two in the possible. Like they got David Irvin, they got DeMarcus Lawrence, and a bunch of other guys that maybe sometimes
when they moved Brandon Graham inside in the Super Bowl,
that was the difference in the game.
Yes.
That was the difference in the game. The Cowboys, outside of DeMarcus Lawrence, don't have somebody that can close out games that way. Nobody on third down, nobody in the 2-minute situations, nobody in end-of-game situations. Those are the critical phases that you have to be good defensively, especially if you're a team built like the Dallas Cowboys to play with the lead with that running game.
Well, and as far as the hard to eat when you're full component, that is one of the reasons these offseason acquisitions could be so good for them. Haloti Nada didn't come there to not win.
Now, I know his physique don't tell you he hungry, but based on NFL winning, his stomach is growling.
Right.
Wherever he at right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Michael Bennett didn't go there to not win. Mike Wallace, who at least Bennett and Haloti have won. Mike Wallace hasn't done any high-level winning in this league, at least not since he left Pittsburgh. Like, he didn't go there to not win.
Only winning he's been doing is at the bank.
Exactly right. He's been cashing a lot of really good checks. So the other thing is this. It's really hard at any point before a season to evaluate teams because what do we know? Well, injuries are going to happen. Like, I thought that the Houston Texans could have been this, but injuries, J.J. Watt, they were merciless, their quarterback, right? What do we know about Philly? Philly lose their left tackle. No problem. Lose their middle linebacker. No problem. Lose the corner they went out and got, Ronald Darby, for 10 weeks with a broken ankle in week 1. No problem. What do you know about Dallas? Lose your left tackle. Oh, I can't win without him. Lose your middle linebacker. Well, with and without Sean Lee. Like, you can't ask us to win games without Sean Lee. Sean Lee, what are you talking about? It's Ray Nitschke.
The Eagles quarterback. They lost their franchise quarterback. Yes. The other guy steps up, wins a Super Bowl.
And, Jenna, that's the wild card. Like, y'all can talk about all these other names. Oh, they got they got this at defense. They got this. This guy's won. The quarterback ain't won nothing. He got a point to prove. We are a better team with me than without me. I know what y'all was saying about Nick Foles. Man, Carson Wentz is a dude, though. He got a Super Bowl ring on, but he didn't earn it. And I can guarantee you that's going to be the driving force in Philadelphia's locker room. Chris Long, is this his last year? Jason Peters, you know something about him? He got a lot of pride. They might have got a little better, boss, when they lost you at left tackle. So those components right there, that they would have enough hunger and their movement in free agency, that stops people from being complacent. So I think they have enough of the components. They really have realistic chances to repeat because of those wild cards. Carson Wentz didn't win with this team. Some of the other veterans that they've added, which I will believe will keep them hungry in 2018.
And the point you were alluding to, like, and when we talk about quarterbacks, like we mentioned the teams ahead of them, like not even mentioning the head being Dallas, not even mentioning the teams right there with them, like Carolina, Atlanta, Seattle, depending on what you think of San Francisco. Now we're at 8, 9 teams in a 16-team conference. But also, when it comes to quarterbacks, like Wentz, Rodgers, Breeze, Cam, Russell Wilson, there's 5 quarterbacks we know are better than Dak. He's trying to decide, where am I amongst other NFC quarterbacks? Alex Smith, Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, Jimmy G, Jared Goff. Like, we're talking about a conference with a lot of good teams, a lot of good quarterbacks. So I understand why Dallas would put the target on the defending champions back. But to get to that last step of the ladder, there's a lot of steps you got to go in between with a lot of really good teams and really good quarterbacks between you.
All right, moving on. Were you just thinking to yourself, you know what, I have not heard a lot about RG3 in the last year? Well, the former rookie phenom quarterback is back on a team. The Ravens are signing Robert Griffin III to a 1-year deal. He wasn't on an NFL roster in 2017, played only 5 games in 2016, both tremendous signs for a great 2018, she said sarcastically. Chris, can RG3 still be a productive quarterback if he's healthy? Let's just start with that. Does he still have the skill set in him?
Well, I don't know about that, Jenna. I think it's a little bit curious, the timing of the Baltimore Ravens announcing the signing with Ozzie Newsome and John Harbaugh being deposed in the Colin Kaepernick collusion grievance that he filed. But
the day before,
they're
going to have to be deposed. They signed RG3. Go ahead. I just
you're right.
No, they
didn't even sign him yet. They just announced that they're going to sign him. They're going to sign him next week.
Had a good workout last week.
Yeah, they're going to sign him next week.
Yes.
We just want everybody to know that. But when you start talking about RG3's skill set, I don't know that he's evolved enough as a passer to be able to have success. And if he can't win from the pocket, if he can't win without relying on his legs the way that he has in the past, then I have a hard time that he's going to stay healthy. If he's not going to be available, I don't know how effective he's going to be moving forward, even as a backup option. Right. Because if you're having to turn to your backup quarterback, that means your starting quarterback is knocked out of the game. So if you're in that situation as a team and you don't have a reliable backup in terms of a guy that you know is going to be available and can take the hits and can go through an NFL regular season, then what good is he as a backup option?
I believe he's a backup quarterback. I believe the question should be, is he good enough or have the skill enough to be a backup quarterback? Because that's what he is. It's not as if we're asking him to start 6 games for Baltimore. That's if we start 8 games. Is he good enough to be a backup? And if I'm looking at backup quarterbacks, one of the things I would like to have in a backup quarterback is a guy who has some type of experience. Now, y'all might consider that to be bad experience, but it is experience, starting experience of playing in the NFL. There's another thing I'd like to have in my backup quarterback. It'd be like some type of talent. RG3 does have some type of talent. He does have talent to be able to throw the ball. He does have to evolve into a pocket passer, but that only comes with time. When you run a 4.3 and you've been the fastest man on the field, even after your rookie year, he was the fastest man on any football field that he's ever been on. It's hard to change from that. That only comes with time. His confidence got totally destroyed. He made some bad football decisions, him and his dad, as far as the style of play that he wanted to, the type of pressure that he put on Mike Shanahan there in Washington, and the turmoil that he created in that locker room. But is he still good enough to be a backup quarterback in this league? Yes. Are there 100 quarterbacks better than RG3? No, but you're never going to know that if you don't give them time. I just believe in NFL teams, especially in quarterbacks, because it takes a lot longer for the cookies to get done. You can sit in the NFL locker room for years, and a quarterback, he might finally get it. I saw Rich Gannon. Didn't play early in his career. Later in his career, he went on to be offensive MVP there in Oakland with John Gruden. So I believe it can happen. Like, the quarterback is not the position like other positions. I believe it can be cultivated. I believe it can be developed, that one time he could come into a game and your starter gets hurt. He might be able to replace him for 3 or 4 games. I do believe he's worth the 1-year investment because of talent, because of he spent time starting, and because he's got some, man, talent needs to be cultivated. Like, every dancer needs a stage. And I just believe at some point you surrender what you know as far as being an athlete. You surrender to the coaching and become a pocket passer. I believe he can get good enough to be able to do that.
Listen, I've said multiple times on this show that I don't think black quarterbacks get a fair shake as backups. We got a lot of bad white quarterbacks sitting on benches. And it feels to me like if you're a black quarterback, even in 2018, if you're not good enough to be a starter, it's very hard for you to get a job as a backup. I feel like they're playing by a different standard. And so I understand that. I think people probably would expect me to be a fan of the RG3 signing because I'm also a better on talent. As CeCe was talking about talent, one of the reasons I'll deal with all the Odell stuff. Give me all the talent in the world. RG3 to me, though, checks a bunch of boxes that are not boxes I want checked for my backup quarterback. One is the injury part of it. Because if Joe Flacco goes down, at the very least, I want to know the guy who has been my backup is going, even if he's not great, is going to be able to go out there and give me a month of football if I need him to. RG3 is as injury-prone as any quarterback I've seen in the last decade. So that's one box. Another box is I don't want my backup quarterback to be a divisive force in my locker room. Now, I think that was an unfair knock on Cap. I don't think he was divisive in the locker room. Might have been divisive amongst the fans. Might have been divisive amongst the owners.
Neither one of them were liked in the locker room. The real truth, RG3 was not liked in the locker room, and Cap was not liked before the protest in the locker room.
Okay, well, maybe before the protest in the locker room, but nobody was keeping him out of the league before the protest. Post-protest, he won whatever the award is for voted on by his teammates.
Yeah, that don't mean the teammate that we like. That means teammate that showed the most courage. Okay. And it did take courage.
CeCe's right. CeCe's right on that front about the Cap thing.
We can get into the Cap thing, but let me just finish this real quick. I don't, and whether RG3 it's fair or not, that guys seem to, at each stop he's been at, not love him in the locker room. That coaches at his first stop in particular haven't loved him and his father. That is to me a real thing. And so there are RG3. If I were a Ravens fan, this is not the guy I would want as my backup quarterback. Now, I understand the idea of if you want to say we have no hope as a starting quarterback and we just are going to roll the dice that he's not going to get hurt, we're going to go talent over a McCown brother, talent over one of these guys, fine, I suppose. But for those reasons, I understood why RG3 was out of football last year.
The Browns last week traded Cody Kessler. Now, there's a market for him. There's a market for RG3. Now, I wouldn't trade a warm six-pack for Cody Kessler, all right? And there's a bunch of bad quarterbacks, all right? So, let's just spread it around, all right? I'll take his experience, which none of them other guys have.
Yes.
And Josh McCown, y'all tell me when he was good. Forget about bad. Forget about getting hurt. When was he any good?
I'm with you. And he just signed another contract with the Jets.
Right, but
ain't nobody on TV telling him he shouldn't have no job.
Go ahead. No, I think there's separate categories to a degree. I think there's separate categories from what you're asking out of Josh McCown and what you're asking out of RG3. And I think Josh McCown, you saw it when he got injured last year, the effect that it had on what the players were saying about him as far as what a rallying force he is in the locker room. Again, I'm not out here advocating for Josh McCown. Mm-hmm. I just don't think RG3 is not the guy that I think has gotten an unfair shake in this league. I think there's plenty of guys that have. I don't think RG3 is one of those guys.
All right, Chris, thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you guys for having me.
It's always fun. That wasn't an awkward... I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.